EB03 is officially released in Japan and heading into the Hiroshima Championships later this weekend, which we will cover on the channel. A lot of people have been posting deck lists with these EB03 cards to get ready, and we've also seen a couple tournaments on a much smaller scale that give us a good idea of what a lot of these deck upgrades look like in the Heroine's EB03 edition. I have literally like 40 different deck lists from various people that I've seen online post about their different results or theories on decks that I'm going to share with you in this video. And if you enjoy this and you want to see more of this, please subscribe. We are literally less than 100 people away from 20,000 people on YouTube, which is a huge milestone, especially for me. So let's get into it and talk about probably the biggest conversation piece of EB03, Vivy, the new leader. Vivy, if you do not know, just a quick summary, is an upgrade to its OP04 leader. The same color typing, power level, has two different effects. One is a once per turn. When one of your characters with an original cost of 4 or more would be KO'd, you can trash one card from hand instead, giving a little bit of survivability to your characters. And it has an active A main. If you rest the leader, up to one of your opponent's characters gets minus 2,000 power for the turn, and then one of your characters without a when attacking effect gains rush. Very similar to the old leader, except you don't necessarily get card draw. So starting off with this list first, it's from Akanashi OP on Twitter. They're also a fabulous YouTube creator if you ever want to watch their videos. There was a 3-on-3 tournament where the winning deck list or winning team consisting of Green Zoro, meh, Emu, meh, but EB03 Vivy as the third and final leader. Especially with no ace, I found this deck list to be very interesting, right? A big sort of straw hat package alongside just generically good cards for the archetype, right? You start off with the Vivy Searcher right here that came out in, I believe it was OP13. This Vivy card being able to search for Straw Hat Crew cards is a big reason why you have this combination together. One of the other one drops that I thought was really interesting was a couple copies of the Ace, Sabo, and Luffy from OP13. It's got that active A main. You may give an active Dawn to one of your leaders or characters and then trash this character, giving your opponent minus 3,000 power during the turn. This can be especially cool in combination with your leader effect, right? Because you could have this character on field, right? This one cost, another character like maybe the 3 cost Sanji. And then you can use the active A main to trash the 1 cost, give a Dawn to the Sanji to increase the Sanji to 7,000 power, and then you could also utilize your leader to minus 5,000 in power in total with the 1 drop and your leader to give this Sanji rush. That's a 4 Dawn play you can make to turn the tide of 5,000 power on a single character. There's also really cool combinations that you can utilize with this 1 drop, right? With Ben Beckman, as you can see on the list, trashing a character, and also the 10 drop Shanks. I thought it was really surprising too to have Cavendish in this deck, right? Because Cavendish having a when attacking effect doesn't gain that rush, but it's just a good card in general to be able to draw cards, right? Because with your protection effects, you're gonna need card draw. You've also got this Vivy leader, which has a couple cards that are a little bit different, right? No Vivy Searcher, but you have 10 drop buggies. You have got 8 cost Silver's Rayleighs. The boss monsters are a bit different within this archetype. The 10 cost buggy is really nice, right? Because it's just any sort of removal. And if you've been able to keep your field, especially alongside Vivy's effect, you can keep that buggy on the field and give it rush. A 12,000 power rush character. I think one of the things that you're going to see a lot of times with this Vivy archetype is that the 10 drop Bomb Shanks, as they call it, is just a solid card to have in the deck, right? The on play effect being able to KO stuff. Here's a tournament that happened in the Heroine's Cup, which if you do not know, in the Heroine's Cup, it's essentially a tournament where every single leader and archetype that is allowed in this tournament is a female character in One Piece. It's kind of a special tournament in collaboration with the EB03 release. But I just wanted to note that the first and second place decks within this tournament are Vivy, the new leader. So you've got this one in here. It's got the Kobe, which I thought was really interesting, having a when attacking effect, and also Kyros. Kyros, really nice removal, right? Even though it's not power based, to be able to get something off of the field and potentially have a 9,000 power rush character on 7 Dawn. Just a really good option for the deck in general. And then the first place list in this deck, which is a lot different really in my opinion. You've got the Searcher Vivy back on, but you're including different pieces that you can find alongside the deck, like the 2K Cobra, right? Being an Alabasta type is easy to find. Another one of the trends that you're probably seeing within this deck is that the 5-cost blocker Nami is a great addition to have in this archetype because your leader is multicolored and you're filtering the hand for the different pieces within your deck. This is also the user of the second place Vivy that we just talked about. If you're curious, Blue Me, if you want to follow any of these people on Twitter, that's why I'm kind of showing you guys their handles as well. Nero One Piece used this version of Vivy in their tournament that they did in the Black Arm Cup. You'll see this also using the Goa Kingdom Ace Sabo Luffy 1-drops that we talked about in the very first deck list in the winning 3v3 team. This list also kind of interesting because you're utilizing the 3-drop Vivy right from EB02. Very much utilizing something like Zoro Sanji being able to help you draw cards within your deck, right? And searchable because of the 1-drop Vivy. Because Vivy, the 1-drop, can find itself, right? Can find Vivy. That's why everybody runs the new Vivy in EB03, right? Another variation that I've seen within the Vivy decks is multiple different people talking about how you can combine Whitebeard pirates with Vivy, right? We've talked about a lot how a lot of people want to use Straw Hats. Now, this version I thought was weird. It is just like literally a pure Whitebeard Pirates version. It's not any part really Alabasta, just Whitebeard Pirates. You've got the 3-cost Ace promo, right? Being able to manipulate your top 5. You've got Marco, which is incredible draw. The 5-cost blocker Ace that allows more draw. The 6-cost Vista in OP13, right? That has double attack. Think about Vivy giving this double attack and also having a removal protection effect that is not necessarily leader locked, but you can trash a Whitebeard Pirates card to be able to save it, which if your whole deck is Whitebeard Pirates, then you have a Whitebeard Pirates card to trash. Utilizing Jozu from the starter deck, being able to draw 2, trash 1, right? Revealing a Whitebeard Pirates card when your whole freaking deck once again is Whitebeard Pirates, except for a couple copies of Goldie Roger, that is. And Edward Newgate, right? Again, a double attack character without a when attacking, being a 10,000 power double attack. And being able to draw 2 cards if on the on play, the revealed card on top is a Whitebeard Pirate. I think this deck is super cool. Here's another person that built the Whitebeard's Pirate version of Vivy, utilizing some of the other cards in this deck, like the starter deck Oden, the Namul, right, to be able to draw more cards. The 5-drop Izo, right, from I think it was EB01 that a lot of people have seen use in the Edward Newgate leader, right? When JCM got his top with that not too long ago. And also stuff like Yamato, right? Especially if you take an early life or are at 3 life, which is pretty easy to have when you're a 4 life leader, being able to draw 2 cards and give a rested Dawn 2 leader. Maybe you don't want to utilize the Vivy effect, but just swing 6 with your leader. I believe this also came from a Heroine's Cup as well with Vivy. This is a runner up, but utilizing a couple different cards that we haven't seen typically in this deck, right? You've got the Mr. 3, a nice blocker that is really good into green, right? If they want to rest it, you could just draw cards instead. And you've also got Edward Newgate, right? I thought this was very interesting because Vivy being a leader that can minus 2,000 power on a character, you can kind of almost make this like a Marco deck in a sense, right? Red Blue Marco being able to minus power on different characters with its leader effect to utilize KO effects like Edward Newgate, like Silver's Rayleigh. I thought it was a really cool combination of cards that you can utilize in this deck. We've also got this version of Vivy that is utilizing a couple copies of Duval, right? A nice play set on this. And also the nice 2K Sanji being able to be aggressive if they're doing sort of a starve method and be able to swing big. Especially on an activate main, you can technically give this guy rush. And for the final Vivy list that I'm going to show you in this video, I'm pretty sure it's the final one that I'm going to show you, including the Tony Choppers, right? And nice 2K. This person though, Kai Fo on Twitter, has also included a couple other deck lists that I do want to talk about. First of all, Kobe, right? Kobe did get some really cool additions in the 3-cost Hibari and the 4-drop Kujaku, I think it is, or Peacock. And so I was always curious on how, if you could fit these in, what the deck list could look like. Right, running a ton of different Navy sword type characters within this deck with a cost of 6 or less allows Kujaku to boost so many of them, right? Your Kobe from PRBO2 not only gets a plus 1000 power on the opponent's turn with its effect, but on the defensive side with Kujaku can be an 8,000 power character. Like, how do you get rid of that if you don't have a cost removal based deck, right? Your Hibari gains extra power. Your Helmeppo gains extra power, a 9,000 power character on the defensive side. And then Hibari on top of that, being able to give the leader character the ability to attack actives, and then on that activate main, also minusing the power. This is such a cool deck, in my opinion, that I really want to be successful. So it's going to be curious to see whether or not this Kobe kind of picks up a little bit and can excel a little bit more in this format. I also want to talk about Green Purple Luffy just for a brief second. It doesn't necessarily gain anything in EB03, but the promo Robin, which just came out, will now be legal also in this format. So I do want to mention it, right? It's a once per turn effect on this 3-cost Robin. If your Straw Hat type characters would be removed from the field by your opponent's effects, you may rest one of your Dawn cards instead. I've mentioned this several times before that Green Purple Luffy is very good at leaving Dawn active at the end of turn, right? Just with its leader effect alongside Sanji Pudding. Even the 5-cost Sanji that we get in OP13, right? You very often have Dawn left up for different events like Gum Gum Giant or Dead Man's Game, and now you can also utilize it for this Robin if you really face a heavy removal decks. Also, Robin protects herself, which I think is very important, right? Because it says on that once per turn, if your Straw Hat Crew type characters would be removed, doesn't have the clause of like other than this character that a lot of other protection effects that we see in this game. So if a removal deck wants to start removing your characters by an effect for any reason, they have to do this Robin twice in order to actually start removing characters on the field. I find it to be so interesting, right? They have to try to remove something twice. It's so good in my opinion and a good addition for the deck, especially because the deck did fall off in OP13. And so the next archetype that I'm going to show you multiple deck lists for is Sabo. Sabo gaining the Koala in EB03. I said in my set review that is just a nice addition, right? Being able to fulfill your leader effect to have an 8-cost on the field and on the on KO, spit out something like your 6-cost secret rare Sabo. This is a pretty simple deck list in my opinion. I don't think there's anything too crazy in here. I do like the Stussy and 8-cost Red Dragon within this archetype, and I think it's just a solid deck list for a good leader. Now, this Sabo list is one that ended up championing an event, right? Beating out a blue-purple Luffy. The VOD is actually being posted on the Shamai Cup YouTube channel, which you should go check out if you, again, like watching Japanese games. For the most part, basically the same list, but also utilizing the 4-cost promo Sabo that we got in the McDonald's series, right, in Japan. Your 2Ks can be a variety within this deck list, right? This one having Hack instead of something like Morley. Also a couple copies of Koala. And this deck overall, I feel like for the most part is pretty straightforward and the same, but still, when the deck list gets going, it can be strong, like I showcased on my YouTube video about the deck. Here's another version, once again, kind of mixing a little bit of stuff and also including a copy of Roger in there. And now let's go into another leader that I'm curious about, Purple Blue Sanji. This one getting a top 8 in the 5-on-5 cup, ended up falling to Green Zoro, which is kind of always been a tough matchup, but really utilizing the new Reiju card. I talked about on this Reiju how your turn on play Dawn -1, you can utilize one of your events with a cost of 7 or less, utilizing Gum Gum Red Rock, a Boof Burst, right? Or even something like Brochette Blow for just a Dawn -1. It's just a really cool style and way to play this deck in my personal opinion. You've also got this list right here, going 3-1 in a Starbucks tournament, losing to Black Emu, and you see once again being able to utilize different event cards. You see Gravity Blade Raging Tiger as a tech option. Gum Gum Culverin also can be a tech option in the deck, and this having a couple more copies of Reiju, right, in replacement to something that we saw in the previous list, which replaced the secret rare ace that a lot of people are trying out. Just such a fun deck in my opinion. Now let's go over to the Nami deck list. I said that Nami kind of gets some of the biggest boosts in this set for the leader, and I think is going to be a pretty solid one heading into this format. Only lost in this tournament to a Gold D Roger, I think going second in that matchup. As I've talked about in the previous videos, you're really utilizing the 5-drop Nami and the 7-drop Robin, right? Great cards to utilize within this deck list. Also putting in the Searcher event, right, which finds so many different cards. Will You Be My Servant? Literally finds everything in this deck except the couple copies of the OP13 Newgate blocker itself, obviously, and Blaze Slice, which a lot of yellow decks are actually playing Blaze Slice, I've noticed. Really nice to be able to rest a 4-cost blocker. But this event puts so much consistency in your deck, right? Because you're just playing a good stuff deck, right? A lot of blue, just good stuff cards like Marco, Newgate, the promo fan letter girl, Red Rock even, Pudding, and then the yellow cards, right? The Nami and Robin are just now categorized as good stuff cards in general, but now you have a search for Eustace Captain Kidd, right? Another good stuff card. Okiku, Kiku Nojo, your 2Ks in Hiyori, Baby 5, Zeus. The consistency of this deck is huge now thanks to this event, and it makes me really, really excited to see this leader in the upcoming format and championships. We've also got this deck list, which won the Casual Cup over at the Overseas Event Twitter, and for the most part is pretty much the same deck list, right? Just changing out several of the different ratios and including a couple copies of Otama. The nice 1-drop in OP13, which, like I mentioned earlier, as a 4-life leader, it's very easy to get to 3 life, and you're probably going to do it within the first couple turns of the game. So why not just add a couple more copies in there to add some consistency to your deck, right? Being able to draw 2, trash 1. There's not much different with this list because I think it's a pretty solid list. You've also got this list posted by Koizumi over on Twitter, which I actually want to shout out a little bit of what they've posted on this as part of their caption. The result of battling against Red Blue Ace feels pretty doable. A lot of the videos that I've seen, I genuinely believe that Blue Yellow Nami has a pretty good matchup, or at least a very winnable matchup against Red Blue Ace, which is one of the titans of the format in OP13, and I still think is going to be a good deck in EB03. If you can consistently beat Ace and have a fair battle against something like Emu, it's probably going to be a pretty good deck for you to play. And again, pretty much the same list as we've seen, not much different, just adding maybe like one more copy of Red Rock as the different twist, but overall, just like a good stuff deck. I'm so excited to watch Nami. The next leader I'm going to talk about is Trafalgar Law, right? Trafalgar Law in EB03 getting the new secret rare. And although I said, and I still kind of stand by this, I'm not 100% sold on the secret rare, I did want to try to find some lists trying out the secret rare because who knows? You never know until you try. Reminder that the 8-cost secret rare does have Rush as a 6,000 power character, and if you trash a card from hand on the activate main alongside this character, you can add 1 card from the top of your deck to the top of your life and play a 7-cost or less Trafalgar Law from your hand. There being plenty of 7-cost or less Trafalgar Laws that are so good in the Supernova category, including the secret rare 7-cost Trafalgar Law, the 6-cost Trafalgar Law, right, in OP13, the restand Trafalgar Law, the blocker Trafalgar Law is so good that you maybe even want to try the 1-cost Rosinante, right, that we saw in OP12, I think it was. The 1-cost Rosinante may seem weird in this deck, right, but being a 1-cost searcher that specifically reveals any Trafalgar Law from the top 5 cards of your deck is actually so interesting, right? Because you play so many Trafalgar Laws. Even though the Rosinante is not a supernova type, it just adds another searcher to your deck. Like, look how many searchers there are in this deck. There is 4, 8, 12, 16 searchers, which for the most part find everything in your deck. I find this to be so interesting of an archetype in general. There's even more Trafalgar Laws that I'll show you right here. This Trafalgar Law player, Namiko, over on Twitter, ended up what I am pretty sure is a 3v3, taking third place in the tournament. And through their games that they played, went X1, 4-1 through the qualifiers, and then I think maybe dropped one other game in the top cut. Their list a little bit different, only utilizes 2 copies of the secret rare Trafalgar Law, but also no Rosinante and only 2 copies of the Kid and Killer Supernova Search, prioritizing a little bit more the protection of Capone Beige and also the couple copies of Scratchman Apu, which we've seen in the OP13 format is just a nice card to have, right? Is a good green 2K. Also, the one-ofs of the Stun Bonnie, which we saw in the area tournament, was so good. The 5-cost secret rare blocker Bonnie, and the, I believe this is the 3-cost Bonnie that is a blocker and replaces one of your life with the supernova to get off your leader effect. A little bit different of a style of a deck, but one that I thought was noteworthy to show. And finally, from Ninfia, this version of the deck to try out, utilizing a ton of the secret rare laws, but still including some of the other good stuff cards in the supernova package, like that Bonnie that I mentioned, the blocker Bonnie, as well as Scratchman Apu. This person also posted several other lists that I'm going to showcase to you because I think they're good. Even though we've already talked about Sanji, here we go. One that's playing 4 copies of the new Reiju and several of the... I thought this list was very interesting because they didn't include the 3-cost Sanji that came in OP12, and I don't know if that's correct, but could be very interesting to try out, right? Take that guy out, and how does your deck actually flow? You've also got red purple Uta, right? Because Uta got several film cards in EB03 that I thought were very nice, good additions into the deck, utilizing the new Uta 5-cost SR in the set, right? Drawing more cards and playing a vanilla character. As you see in here, got a couple of copies of the Ein and also the Viola. And then also a Yamato in this with the new secret rare Trafalgar Law, which I thought was very interesting. And also good stuff Nami, who knew? Even though your Nami can't be found off something like the Luffy or the Kid Killer Supernova Searches, it's just a nice card to have in your deck. And with that new Yamato, right, that we got, that 5-cost, just once again an excellent card, right? Since you have a Land of Wano leader, give 3 Dawn to your leader and swing 8k double attack. Both the Nami and Yamato playable off the 6-cost Trafalgar Law. Let's talk about a couple Sugar deck lists though. Sugar is a interesting card that got the brand new Monet. The Monet blocker, right, looks at the top 5 and grabs a 1000 power or less character or any event card, places it in your hand. Obviously, in the Sugar deck, it is more so just trying to find an event, right? You run so many different events in here. You run the Divine Departure event in OP13, Radical Beam, the Divine Departure from OP10, I think it was, the 1-drop Don Quixote Searcher event, Gum Gum Red Hawk, Hell's Judgment, Slow Beam Sword, and the Igloo event. There's so many to utilize in this as the deck that constantly uses events to ramp up, be able to counter out. I thought this list was interesting, not playing the EB03 Sugar card, right, which can play out your Monet or Don Quixote Rosinante for free, or maybe your Don Quixote Doflamingo blocker from PRBO2, but I think a couple people just thought maybe it's not worth it in this deck. You want to slot in the events instead. As posted in this explanation that they had as well, the issue is that it only has a role in the post 2 if the opponent doesn't come at you with a punch. Even so, you bring out a 5-6k character, you don't really have enough events that can protect the character. Really interesting insight, I thought. Here's one list, though, that does play the Sugar within this archetype, a little bit more minimizing on the amount of events in the deck, just really solidifying to the Searcher, the Igloo event, and also God Thread. But as this deck typically tries to do with its ramping, play out your big bodies, swarm the board with like Don Quixote, Doflamingo, and Rosinante. Now you've got the Monet as well, and who knows, Goldie Roger. Coming up on the tail end, now we've got the sporadic different amount of leaders in this. I saw a red-purple Luffy deck list that I thought was really cool. Right, this red-purple Luffy looking at the new Charlotte Linlin. Especially with that on play of kind of cycling your hand a little bit and ramping a Dawn, but on the on KO, also gaining a life, makes it kind of a sticky body on your field and a really cool one. Now you have multiple copies of cards with the 7-drop Charlotte Linlin and the 9-drop Charlotte Linlin that heal a life. This deck all about ramping, right? Also including the 4-drop Pudding from EB03 is just so nice to be able to use. And especially with the Garp Searcher, can find literally every single card except Gum Gum Giant in your deck. Think about that. You can find all your boss monsters, you can find all your 2Ks, just a good stuff deck. I've also got a couple of deck lists from Mizuki over on Twitter that I thought were cool, including King. I talked about how in my video that I really like the idea of King, right, with the new Black Maria that searches out Onigashima. And you've also got a new card with your page 1. Or I'm sorry, this is ulti. This is page 1. Being able to play out the old starter deck page 1 and also one of the, well, he's not really new, but one of the newer ones. I don't know if King is good. I have literally like no practice on King whatsoever because the deck, in my opinion, hasn't been viable enough really to try out as someone who is a bad deck connoisseur. But I do think that this is a good boost for the deck to consistently get out a card that a lot of the Animal Kingdom partially purple black pirate decks need in order to survive. I've also got another version of Uta, right? Especially with that new 5-drop Uta in EB03, you can choose what kind of vanillas you want to play with, right? Including these, I forget what this guy's name is, but he's a vanilla, right? A 4/6 vanilla. Here's another set of 4/6 vanilla. Here's the Ein. Here's the Baccarat, or however you pronounce it, blocker. I mentioned with the 1-cost Hiyori, right, being perfect for the Oden deck. I mentioned the green Oden right from the very beginning of the game, but you can also include it in red-green Oden from EB01. Being able to draw 1 card and actually attach the 1 Dawn to perfectly synergize with your leader effect, right, if you want to trash that character. An excellent activate main in my opinion. Pretty much the same, I feel like, in terms of a deck list from what we've seen from Oden up to this point, but trying to stylize a little bit with the Dead Man's Game, and 4 copies of You Could Be My Samurai. That's a lot, but can kind of work out when you have a bunch of 1-drops in the Otama, Hiyori, also the 4-drop Hiyori, which is never going to swing, and Momonosuke if you don't plan on searching. You've got Vegapunk here, which I'm so excited about in EB03, right? The Lilith being able, your turn on play, if you have 2 or less life cards, draw 1 card, is a perfect candidate for Vegapunk, which is a 2-life leader, and the 5-drop EB02 Vegapunk scientist character, right? Being able to play something like Lilith off of the effect. Also getting that S-Snake in EB03, being able to heal 1 life, which is so cool, especially as a deck that runs a ton of trigger cards, character cards specifically. So you have an opportunity in a turn to not only play out this character and heal a life potentially, and on top of that, you can also heal another life with Vegapunk's leader effect. I think Vegapunk is so cool. It is a glass cannon style deck that a lot of people have told me, like, once you run out of cards, which is very easy to run out of cards, you're kind of just holding on for dear life, and you're hoping that your aggressive start at the beginning of the game is enough to just close out right then and there, which is pretty fair of an analysis, I think. But a very cool deck if you're looking for a fun rogue one in OP13 and EB03. You've also got Yuzuha over on Twitter posting Usopp, right? I talked about how the Rebecca, right, the neat 2-drop in EB03 is an excellent way to find and play out Corrida Coliseum. Again, just like I said about Onigashima, is in a very important stage that the leaders that utilize it need to have on the field. So it's great to have a new consistency card in a deck like Usopp. especially because Usopp hasn't really seen much play in the last several sets, and PRBO2 gaining that Sabo, a nice searchable Dressrosa card 2K that you can utilize. I wouldn't mind revisiting Usopp in the EB03 format. Now, I will say, I just scroll through Twitter, and when I see a really cool list, I want to showcase it, and I bookmark it. I found out that I actually had bookmarked several deck lists from Prionko Gift. We've seen this guy in the Japan Championships, and he also makes great YouTube content, so if you want to go check out his channel, and maybe some of the notes that I think he's created in the past, go check that out. But this list I wanted to showcase of Uta, which is a fan favorite deck, is not using the new secret rare, but the new event card, right? I talked about how you can swarm the field very easy with an Uta deck to get that plus 2,000 power off, and this is the exact same. I also find this really interesting because with the 10 drop Shanks from OP13, right, that restands all of your Dawn, and you can't play any cards from your hand during this turn. That doesn't count the counter phase, right? So when you play this 10 drop Shanks, you can leave Dawn open to utilize for your counter event that you got in EB03, which I thought was really interesting of an idea that I didn't think about at first. Uta being one of the decks that I always have built, it's going to be fun maybe to try it out in OP13. We've also got from him a Carrot deck, right? Carrot getting a top 4 placement in one of the recent online regionals in OP12. I've talked about how maybe you could try to utilize some things in OP13, especially with the 4-drop Trafalgar Law, right? Being able to play a 5-cost or less character. Something like Carrot to do some freezing, the Bonnie or the Inarashi, and on top of that, you now have a new Carrot from EB03, right, to be able to KO a 5-cost or less and play one of the Zhaos from your hand, that 3-cost stage, which is so important for the deck, especially trying to cheat it out because it is a 3-cost stage. Carrot's an excellent option. And then the last list from him that I'm going to showcase is Doflamingo, right? Doflamingo getting that boost in PRBO2 from the Jinbei is now potentially going to utilize the Boa Hancock. The Boa Hancock, right, with that on play, being able to bottom deck one of the cards from your opponent's hand, but also give your leader or a character a Dawn each, can help synergize with Doflamingo's leader effect, right? Because you need Dawn attached to be able to use it. He actually also said in his tweet that it actually really hit well within this meta to be able to minus the hand size, right? Because 5 or more cards is very easy to have in one piece, and be able to go ahead and swing 8,000 power in the coming turns with the aggression. I thought it was a really interesting twist on Doflamingo, a leader that hasn't really seen too much limelight since the ban of the 4-cost Jinbei, so maybe you could see a little bit of a comeback. And then this final one's going to be a conglomeration of 4 different lists from One Piece XY over on Twitter. I think have some fun ones, including King talking about it again. Really, so a lot of the same stuff, but I will say some of the boss monsters that are different in here. You've got the Silver's Rayleigh, right, which is just a good purple card in general, in my opinion. You've got the Kaido 9-drop, the nice boss monster from OP08, which is searchable in this deck as an Animal Kingdom Pirates character. It's just a fun deck to be able to work on, especially because you have the Searcher Queen and, like I mentioned, the Black Maria, which helps find Onigashima. Purple Yellow Croc, one of my favorite cope decks, right? Utilizing the Robin. A lot of people, when they first saw the Robin, right, which has the ability to deal 1 damage, and if your opponent's at 0, that 1 damage ending the game with your victory, a lot of people thought immediately of using Oh Come My Way in Purple Yellow Crocodile to be able to redirect an attack on this Robin to be able to win the game. I thought this was a super funny list to be able to utilize. It's unfortunately using Secret Rare Kuma, so if you don't have them already, rip. They are a costly bunch, but more or less the same deck in my opinion that it was using before. I like the inclusion of the OP13 Lilith right in this deck, just being able to find a trigger card in your deck, which is a lot of different key pieces like Kikunojo, Oh Come My Way, Hell's Judgment, Ragnarok, a baby 5 2K, Capone, another 2K. and just a really fun one to use. You've also got another Uta list, right, which is using a different variety of 2Ks. You've got the Luffys over here. You have the Luffy film searcher, which I believe both of these vanillas have the film tag, as well as the Rush bomb shanks and Buena Festa searches. I also thought it was cool to include a couple copies of the Sanji, right? Even though it's not a film card, it's always going to get bottom decked on your searches. It's just, like I mentioned, a good stuff card. In the final deck list for this video, we've got Shirahoshi. Now, Shirahoshi has a couple different cool pieces that I wanted to give a shout out to in this deck list. First, talking about the secret rare Uta, right? The secret rare Uta, being able on that activate main to set one of your Dawn cards as active and rest a 4 cost is a really nice activate main to be able to close out games in a sense. But on top of that, at the end of turn, you can actually use it to restand one of your film characters, which 9-drop starter deck film Shanks. It's really the only thing that like you can restand, but it's such a cool thing to be able to restand, right? Just have an 11,000 power body that stays active on the field. Your opponent can't swing into it. And on top of that, Smoothie, right? Especially because Shirahoshi's leader effect turns 1 card from the top of your life face up. Smoothie is an excellent addition to be able to use that on play effect, KO a 2 cost on the field, right? A chum blocker or anything of the sort, and then put that life back face down. There's also a couple copies of the new Shirahoshi in EB03, right? Which is a great way to add another life and all the Neptunians that you run within this deck gaining 1,000 power. I know there's a lot of people that love playing Shirahoshi in my community, whether you're in the Discord or the comments and stuff like that. And I think this could be a fun deck to go back to in EB03. But that's it. A video that's probably really long, right? And showcased so many different decks. Let me know which leader you're most excited about in EB03. And again, we will be streaming the Japan Championships that are happening soon in the EB03 format. So if you want to see these decks in action, make sure to go subscribe and help us get to 20,000 subscribers. My name is Jake. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.